How the next Kawhi Leonard failed in the NBA. Let's get into this.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic.
Quickly before we get the video started, if you guys enjoy this video and want to see more NBA content just like this one, hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell. Anyways, back to the video. Stanley Johnson was drafted with the number 8 overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. Going into the draft, the general consensus about Stanley Johnson was on the defensive side, he was seen as a generational talent and one of the better defenders coming out of the draft in some time, but on the offensive side, he wasn't seen as anything special, but if he could really work on his offensive game after getting into the NBA and potentially improving that offensive game each and every season, and maybe getting to a point where he's a pretty good offensive player, he could really be a true generational talent. We see so many different players going into the NBA that they're great on the defensive side, but they're not so great on the offensive side, but once getting into the NBA, they really put everything together, and some of the best players in the NBA we see currently are exactly from that build. From a guy going into the NBA who is seen as a fantastic generational talent on the defensive side, but not so great offensively, but eventually they figure it out. You talk about a guy like Kawhi Leonard, going into the NBA, he was never seen as a good offensive player, he was just a great defensive player, and that's the reason why he got drafted so high at the 15th overall selection. And then eventually, after improving his game each and every season for the Spurs, eventually he got to the point where he is at currently, and the true superstar that we know Kawhi for today. Another guy with a similar story is Jimmy Butler. Going into the NBA, he also was not a good offensive player, but he was a great defensive player, and then once he got to the NBA, he really worked on his offensive game each and every season, and then eventually he got to the point where he's at today and a superstar in Jimmy Butler. The thing about these guys who are great defensive players but not great offensive players, there's always a potential for them to figure it out on the offensive side, and if they do, then they'll be a special talent. That's the real draw to these great defensive players. And even if they don't turn into a superstar, every team always needs great defenders, so they're always going to be valuable to you. So the big draw to Stanley Johnson's game and the reason why he was drafted with the number 5th overall selection was of course mostly due to his defense, but also he had a great build for the NBA, and if he could potentially figure things out on the offensive side, he could be a really special talent in the NBA. And the talent and ability that Stanley Johnson had at the time was seen as very similar to what Kawhi Leonard had going into the NBA, and that was one of the bigger reasons why Stanley Johnson was getting so many comparisons to Kawhi. And when Stanley actually got to the NBA and started playing for the Pistons, in his rookie season, I would say he had an okay season. He only averaged 8 points per game on a pretty poor 37% shooting from the field, also adding 4.2 rebounds and 1.2 assists, which for the number 5th overall selection is definitely not good, but the good thing about his rookie season was on the defensive side, he was amazing. And it was very exciting to see that his defense translated so well from college into the NBA. Stanley was guarding the opposing team's best player basically each and every night, and it's not like he was just doing an okay job on them and he was just guarding them. He was actually doing a very good job and probably the best job you could possibly do on these superstar players. And you can't really stop these superstar players, but Stanley was doing a great job to at the very least slow them down. After an okay rookie season at best, a lot of people expected Stanley to go in the offseason and truly work on his offensive game and come back into the season in his second year and truly be a much better player than he was in the first year. But unfortunately, instead of improving, Stanley actually went in the other direction and regressed a little bit. In his second season, he only averaged 4.4 points per game on an abysmal 35% shooting from the field, also adding 2.5 rebounds per game and 1.4 assists. Although Stanley was still a very good defender and was still doing a great job on each and every star he was guarding each and every night, the fact that he was drafted so highly in the draft and he was regressing on the offensive end when already he wasn't necessarily good on that end was a little bit concerning. And in Stanley's third season with the Pistons, his numbers went back up to around 9 points per game on 37% shooting from the field, 4 rebounds per game, and 1.6 assists. And basically at that point, we already knew what Stanley Johnson was going to be in the NBA after 3 seasons. Of course, defensively, we all know what he was at that point. He was a very, very good defender at the very least, maybe even a great defender, always guarding the opposing team's best player. But talking about his offensive abilities, he had the ability to catch and shoot from that corner 3-point jump shot, maybe just catch and shoot from that 3-point range in general. He also had decent handles and had the ability to pull up from that mid-range jump shot. He had somewhat of a post turnaround fadeaway from time to time within his game. He had the ability to get all the way to the basket and was pretty athletic, so he had the ability to dunk over over you or finish around you with crafty layups. He did have a lefty layup as well as a righty layup, so he definitely had a ton of abilities on the offensive side. The issue with him is he just never really put everything together, and he would have some games where he looked amazing on the offensive side as well as amazing on the defensive side, but the issue was he was just too inconsistent, and overall he never put everything together, and that's basically where his career went. But when you talk about a guy like Stanley, who's a fantastic defender but not so great on the offensive side, there's definitely a place for a player like that. But the issue with Stanley, and the reason why a lot of people don't think he's a good player anymore, was because he was drafted with the number 5th overall selection, and when you're drafted that high, there's a ton of expectations on you. So to just be a guy who's a really good defender but can't really play offense whatsoever, it's not really a great look when you're drafted with the number 5th overall selection. But after Stanley's 3rd season with the Pistons, unfortunately that was his best season of his career. Ever since then, his career kind of went downhill. In his 2018 season with the Pistons, his numbers went down slightly, but after that the Pistons kind of just gave up on him, and he went to the Pelicans for a season. Then they gave up on him, he went to the Raptors for 2 seasons, and basically now he's not even in the NBA anymore. But the thing about Stanley Johnson, at the time, I don't know if it was necessarily a bad pick, because I definitely think there's a ton of talent with Stanley. The issue just he couldn't put everything together, and I think if maybe he was in a different situation or maybe a different organization, maybe there's a chance he would have been a better player in the NBA, because I definitely think there's something there. Just for whatever reason it didn't work out for him in the NBA. But going forward for Stanley, I could still definitely see him getting some opportunities in the NBA. The way he plays defense is always going to help an NBA team, and every team always needs great defenders on their team. If on the offensive side he can find the ability to at the very least just catch and shoot from that 3-point area, I think he'd be a pretty effective player on a team. Just a 3-and-D type player that also has the athleticism and ability to drive to the basket from time to time. Maybe just be a pretty good 3-and-D type player going forward. I could honestly definitely see Stanley becoming a player similar to that, but he would have to reinvent his game in terms of just being able to shoot the 3-point shot a little bit more effectively. And although Stanley Johnson will be seen as an NBA draft bust, being drafted that highly with the number 5th pick and just not having a great career in the NBA in terms of a player being drafted that high, obviously I still think there is a place for Stanley in the NBA. When you can play defense that well and when you're that athletic and have that kind of build that he does, I think there's always a place for you in the NBA. He just needs to figure a few things out. And currently this season he's not actually on any NBA team, which is unfortunate for him, but at the same time it kind of gives him some time off and time to himself to really improve his game, hopefully. So hopefully he's in the gym working on his game, maybe work on his offensive abilities a little bit more, and then maybe, I'm sure he will get another opportunity, but maybe when that opportunity comes he could be a much better player and impress a ton of people. Maybe he could be a very good 3-point shooter, or at the very least a decent 3-point shooter. Maybe he would have some other aspects of his offensive game a little bit more refined than they were in the past, as well as that great defensive ability. And definitely I think he could be a very good player going forward. At the very least a 3-and-D guy coming off the bench. But we'll see what happens to Stanley Johnson. And that's basically the story of Stanley Johnson, the next Kawhi Leonard that never was. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys enjoy this type of video? Do you want me to do more videos like this? Do you not want me to do more videos like this? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.
Dosage. Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.